Okay. I'm not going to worry about the public. Okay, I'm going to call to order the Planning Committee meeting of Tuesday, July 19th. And we have 3 items on the agenda. And so I have a motion on the minutes. Moved, seconded. All those in favor, contrary, carried. The next meeting of the Planning Committee will be September the 7th, 4 o'clock in these council chambers. The first item is an application by Deluxe Custom Homes Limited for rezoning at 7480 Williams Road from single detached RS1E to Coach House ZS12 Broadmoor Zone, and the speaker is Mr. Craig. Wayne, you and Suzanne, I guess, you're on.
I can speak on behalf of this item.
Oh, sorry,
Mr.
Nathan,
Chair.
you're on.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing further to add aside from highlighting that the rezoning is to facilitate the subdivision of one single detached lot into 2 Coach House Broadmoor lots with shared vehicle access, which complies with the arterial road policy. There's an existing single-family home on the property occupied by the property owner. Each new lot would have a principal dwelling and an additional smaller rental dwelling unit above an attached garage. And this is consistent with the pattern of development along this stretch of Williams Road. 3 new trees per lot are being provided per the landscape plan, and landscape security based on the cost estimate is also required prior to rezoning final. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we have a question for Councillor Day on this one.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the parking. So if we look at the map or the drawing of the lot on page PLN 23, it shows that in the very back of the property, on the south side, there would be a car park between the building and the fence. And if after looking at that, councillors would be willing to go look at the overhead view on PLN 12, directly behind this property is a home. And I'm looking at the other lots to the left and right, and they don't appear to have a parking spot in the back. So why would we subject for people on Nevis Drive to 2 cars, you know, fuming and gassing and parking and making noise right on the other side of the fence? Why could we not have that parking elsewhere, like maybe the front yard?
Who wants to tackle that one?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, in terms of the location of the parking, placing the parking in an alternative location would compromise the streetscape and staff's view. I would also point out that there is a significant hedge along the south property line, which is intended to be retained as part of this development, and that an arborist must be on site to supervise any work within that area.
Well, I mean, if there's a big hedge, is it on the property on Williams or the property on Nevis?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the majority of the hedge is located on the adjacent property to the south.
On Nevis.
Yes, if you refer to PLN 21, it does show the location of the hedge.
Okay, got it.
I have the people who live on Nevis been notified of this project?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the sign has been up on the property for quite some time since the application was submitted. Should council grant first reading to the rezoning application, the adjacent properties on Nevis would be notified for the public hearing process.
Not till public hearing at the very end. Okay, can you just, staff just said that this is the same as the other unit, the other double lots with shared driveways along Williams. But I'm having trouble in the picture seeing any vehicles on the back fence. You point out to me which ones left and right have parking in the very rear.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, if I may, in looking at one of the overhead aerials, the properties to the west and east both have the parking space. They just in the at the time that the images were taken, there weren't cars parked in those spaces. If you look a little further to the east, you'll see parking vehicles parked in similar locations at the rear.
Okay, I'll go with this for now, but I am going to go check this out for myself. Thank you.
Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. On our PLN 8, under the Affordable Housing Strategy, it says that each of the new houses will have a coach house above the attached garage, and they're 521 square foot. Is that a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, or what is that?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, that would be a 1-bedroom coach
Thank
house.
you.
Okay, are there any other questions of staff on that? All right, the recommendation is to be introduced and given first reading. I would so move. Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, contrary, carried. Okay, the next item we have is an agricultural land reserve exclusion application by Montrose Industry Limited at 7011 Number 7 Road and PID 024 3797 42-3, and the authorization, the staff recommendation, the authorization from Montrose to forward an exclusion of the agricultural land, removal of 7011 Number 7 Road from agricultural land reserve be denied, and the staff be directed to prepare a letter signed by the Mayor, the Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Environment, Richmond, members of the Legislative Assembly, and the Premier of BC requesting provincial government consider all options to allow exiting landfill at the site of operation in the ALR under non-farm use approval. And the speaker is Mr. Craig, I believe, with supporting staff.
Through the chair, I can speak to this item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. I want to take what I've got on my list. Go ahead, Stephen.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to provide a brief summary of the proposal. The purpose of the application is to remove approximately 150 acres of land comprised of 2 parcels from the agricultural land reserve. The applicant's stated purpose is to operate the existing landfill beyond the current approved term of 2035. Based on information staff have been able to obtain from other levels of government, the purpose of the exclusion is not just to operate beyond the current approved term, but also to increase the amount of fill by an additional 10 meters for a total landfill height of 28 meters. Staff are recommending that the application be denied for the following reasons. The lands are designated for agriculture in the city's official community plan and Metro Vancouver's regional growth strategy. Removal of the lands from the ALR would not be consistent with this designation, as there would no longer be an associated ALR non-farm use approval for the landfill operation. The future use of the lands is currently secured for agriculture. Current council and ALC non-farm use approvals require the site to be remediated to a state capable of soil-based agriculture upon closure of the landfill. Removal of the lands from the ALR would also remove this requirement. The proposal is also contrary to policies contained in the city's OCP and Farming First strategy, which include maintaining the existing ALR boundary and not supporting a loss of ALR land. The proposed exclusion would result in a loss of approximately 150 acres of ALR land. The report also includes further staff analysis on the following aspects of the proposal. Based on staff's assessment, there is a potential significant lift in property value should the lands be excluded, as it signals that the land may be used for industrial uses in the long term. Based on current appraisal data, an approximately 10-fold increase in property value is anticipated as the site is adjacent to existing industrial development. The applicant has proposed a compensation package as part of the exclusion application, which includes putting 2 other parcels into agricultural production, a contribution towards agricultural infrastructure projects, and establishing a natural wetlands on another property owned by the applicant. Based on staff's assessment, the proposed compensation package does not constitute a net benefit to agriculture, and the proposed exclusion would ultimately result in a net loss of ALR land. As an alternative to exclusion, staff believe a more effective solution is for the province to find a way to allow the landfill to continue to operate in the ALR under a non-farm use application subject to City Council and ALC approval. This would allow the land to remain in the ALR, maintain the lands, be used for agriculture once the landfill is closed, and be consistent with the city's OCP and Farming First strategy. Happy to answer any questions.
I would ask committee to see if there's anybody in the audience who would like to speak to us. And I know we have 2 delegations first to get that information and work with staff. Okay, so is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to us on it, and we need your name and address, and whether you, I'd like to know also whether you're part of the, oh, okay, Christian, okay, and whether you're also part of Montrose delegations, and you'll get 5 minutes. Okay, the first one is Christian, this is by Zoom, Dietrich. You're on, sir. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I believe Michael Kennedy was going to present on our behalf.
Okay, instead of you, okay. All right, Mr. Kennedy, come on forward. And I think take that one, and the camera's in front of you. And, okay. Okay. Yeah, you're the one on camera.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Go ahead. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Kennedy. I'm the president and CEO of
I'm
Montrose.
here.
Can you not hear? Let's, okay, we'll start again. Let's get the volume up, okay? Try again, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Kennedy. I'm the president and CEO of Montrose Industries. And just for reference, Montrose is the parent company of EcoWaste. So we're the same company, the same ownership, same leadership team, et cetera, et cetera. I'm joined today on my right by John Moonen, who's a consultant that has helped us with the exclusion application, and also Christian Dietrich, who was mentioned earlier. Christian's joined us from the UK. He's our VP of Waste Management and Recycling Services. We've also got here in the gallery members of our team, many of whom are Richmond residents, both from the office and who operate the landfill. And actually also some of you will know our former CEO, Tom Land, who was my predecessor prior to September last year. We brought these visuals behind me, which may or may not be seen by people on Zoom, but we just wanted to convey here what we do at the landfill. This is not agricultural use at the moment. I know it technically is, but this is what we do: is recycle construction and demolition waste. You can see these pretty clearly. I hope you've all had a chance to read some comments that we provided on the staff report. We sent them to councillors on Friday, together with letters of support from members of the community. I think there's a PowerPoint that should be available to everyone. I don't know if everyone can see that on their screens.
Well, we have, do we have it? PowerPoint, okay, it's on.
So I can't see that here, so we should be on, if we could go to slide 2, which is current reality and status, if we have that. Oh, there it is.
There we go.
So if you can go on to the next slide, please. There we go, thank you. So our perspective is that waste management generally is in crisis in the Lower Mainland, and this is just adding to the housing crisis. Our landfill is filling rapidly. As recently as last week, we took steps to reduce tonnage. If everyone's been down to Williams Road, to the access to the site, it is just super busy right now, because we are one of 2 options in the Lower Mainland for construction and demolition waste. The other one in Delta, the City of Vancouver's landfill, is scheduled to close in the next number of years, and as in 2021, they will probably be restricting tonnage this year. Since I've become CEO in September last year, everybody I've spoken to has said that they want this construction and demolition landfill to continue operating for the long term. And through that, to resolve this impasse that we've had over the past 2 or 3 years, we've been urged by all stakeholders, be it councillors, MLAs, city staff, Metro Vancouver, to pursue different streams to resolve this, one of which is this exclusion application, and second are amendments to the ALR use regulation. So next slide, please. The reasons to exclude, remarkably, The ALC itself has recommended and suggested this twice. This is unprecedented. These properties have never been farmed. They're not being farmed. And in a conventional sense of how we would normally understand soil-based farming, they're not going to be farmed. We've provided a package to the City of Richmond for the establishment of a wetland, support for 2 other properties to be brought into agricultural production that have never been in agricultural production, and a cash contribution to the city, which is based on recent ALR exclusions. And finally, we think the big thing is that through a deferral, it is the City of Richmond that maintains control of everything, be it the zoning, the height, the use, the permits, everything. Nobody else, within reason, has to get involved. Next slide, please. So we've pursued these 2 parallel streams, this exclusion application. This is our preferred option. We recognize it's delicate this year, given it's an election year. But as I just said, the city always controls the zoning. And then amendments to the ALR use regulation. The Ministry of Agriculture has confirmed this is under consideration, and the Ministry of Environment is also supporting. But government is conducting ongoing consultations with an unknown timescale for resolution or what the amendment could be. Next slide, please. So we think there are 4 options in front of you today. One is to forward the exclusion applications to the ALC with council support. 2 is to forward the application without council support. 3 is to deny the application, which is the recommendation from staff. Or 4 is to defer to allow the provincial government to continue consultations on the reg amendment. And we believe that's what the Minister of Agriculture was strongly suggesting in her letter to Mayor and Council from the end of March. It is a simple reality that if option 3 is chosen today, there is a much stronger likelihood that the landfill is going to close in the next 2 to 3 years. It's a vital regional amenity, significant capacity to deal with recycling issues, the jobs and investment that go along with that. We are already behind the curve with planning for what's next. So if we cut off one of the avenues today, it increases that risk significantly. Next slide, please. And to be really clear about what we want to do with this property, we do not want to turn this property into industrial land. We want to continue to operate this property as a landfill until 2055. The city has actually already approved that term. We are seeking an increase in height of 10 meters. But we will only do that if we invest, and this is at our risk, somewhere between 50 and 100 million in what we call a material recovery facility. This will have a significant impact on regional recycling rates, which are currently stuck at, I think, about 62, 63%. We can really move the needle on that. These properties are zoned for agriculture. They will stay zoned for agriculture. We're not looking for a rezoning. And then beyond that, the future use, which has been noted that the lands have to be returned to a condition capable of supporting agriculture. We believe that involves agritech in the future. So those are my comments.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Members of committee, I'm sorry, can we see the screen again so I can, I'm sure there are some questions of people. Carol? Go ahead. You're muted, remember. Thank you.
Okay, we'll get this eventually. Thank you for the presentation. I guess the thing that's sticking in a little bit across on my side is going for that extra 10 meters. When I look at the drawings of how big that is a huge difference. Can we get away without that?
Is that directed to me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, it is. Sorry, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, this question of the delegation.
Yeah, and to continue to operate to 2055, the recycling rates that we need mean that we would need the extra 10 meters. So
Okay.
to have a landfill for that length of time with the investment in the material recovery facility is, yes, you do need the 10 meters.
And then we talked about the minister's comments and the commission, the ministry staff's comments about exploring a range of options and keep working. But what indications do we have that progress can be made, given that it's been an impasse for 2 to 3 years?
Well, we'd like to know as soon as everyone else. We believe that the discussions have been ongoing for a number of months, but we don't know what the timescale is for resolution. And, you know, we could be back here in March or April next year, I don't know, and we'll be closing the landfill because of that uncertainty.
In 2023?
We will be starting to close in 2023.
Okay.
It's not just a simple process of, you know, accepting construction and demolition waste until we're full and then we close the gates. There are a whole series of steps that we need to take starting right now.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Harold?
Yeah, I'm curious, what gives you the idea that the BC government will allow this to go to the ALR when they could simply tell the Land Commission to agree with the agreement that the Land Commission signed in 1993? It seems to me it's a lot easier for the government and everybody to tell the Land Commission that right now the decision they made is wrong.
Well, what I would say to that is the ALC twice has suggested, recommended, it's in writing, said these properties should not be in the agricultural land reserve, which I understand is unprecedented.
But if you're asking the province to take them out, they can equally tell the land reserve to honor the contract. Very simple.
It's not the province, it's the ALC.
Could you explain, if I may follow up? You said the ALC has twice said so to take them out.
Recommended. To
Recommended. Which
yeah.
version of the ALC was that, and what were the dates that those recommendations came in? Do we have it in writing?
2015 and 2020. There's an extract of those two, of the proper phrasing.
Two different groups of ALC, because we know the ALC has not been the same, and chairs have changed, and personnel have changed. That's why I wanted to get that. So 2015 and 2020, and that's on the record.
Yes.
In their minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to go to my other. Councillor Al.
Yes, I have two questions to follow up on the recommendation from the ALC. What did they actually recommend, or who are they recommending? The suggestion as this could be a means to solve the problem, or are they saying that this is something that should happen?
If I may, I'm reading from the package that was sent to all councillors on Friday. This is from a decision from October 2020. The ALC encourages the applicant, along with the City of Richmond, to consider whether the properties might be more suited for alternative uses, such as industrial, which may relieve pressure on other lands within the ALR. There's a second one, John. In 2015,
That's the 2015.
And in 2015, it actually said the panel made no determinative decision in this regard, but encourages the applicant, along with the city, to consider whether the properties might be more appropriately looked at as a logical extension of the adjoining industrial area.
Okay, so my interpretation of that is they are encouraging you to do that as a means or a way to get out of this problem, right? They're not saying that it should be taken away, right? Okay, thanks for that clarification. And secondly, I'm still having a problem to understand the logic. Now, you're saying that because, it's now the service oversubscribed, you might have even considered close it beginning from 2023. So what's the magic of this exclusion application? How would this exclusion from the ALR will suddenly solve every problem.
Because it allows us to submit a non-farm use application.
No, the exclusion, we wouldn't require any.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we can just proceed forward. That's like I said earlier, the city controls then everything related to this, especially the zoning.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay. The floor is open for any more questions of the delegation. Councillor Hobbs?
Thank you, and through the chair. First of all, I think everybody agrees that Eco Waste Montrose does a very valuable service and function there, recycling construction waste. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I think most people would agree that they'd want it to continue in some way. I can say for me, when I look at the 4 recommendations that you have in your report, the 2 first ones are really not on the table for me. Excluding this land from the ALR is not part of my kind of operating principles. I don't support removing it from the ALR. So to me, there's a couple options. We could defer this for now, or we could go with the staff recommendation. Those are what it boils down to for me, just to be straight up with you guys. The question I have for you is, why does the denial of the exclusion request, why does that automatically trigger for you, and I think you kind of touched on it, the closure process? Because if we deny the exclusion request today, I would say that this is still back in the province's court to deal with because of the changes and amendments that they made, which impacted not just you, but I understand other landfills in the province. And I'd say that they have an issue to deal with in terms of what's in the common good, in that we effectively deal with waste materials, not just this location, but others as well. So they have an issue to wrestle with there. And to me, I separate those things from us either supporting the exclusion or denying the exclusion request at our end. I'd say that the province has to deal with that. So why would you say that you automatically, if we deny this today, why would you automatically go into kind of a shutdown mode? Because I think there's still options to be explored there with the province.
Well, I think the simple answer is the uncertainty. Because if denial happens today, we are then relying on, as you said, Councillor, the province. But we have no certainty on that, whether it could happen in this year, even next year. The reason that's important for us is there are steps that we have to take as a private business that's investing its capital in how it does things. But we need to know the routes forward that we can take. One, for example, is if we knew we were closing in 2 years' time, we would leave the scale where it is there on Williams Road. We'd much prefer to move that scale somewhere else. I think everyone in Richmond would prefer that scale to be moved up to where the landfill is, with all the truck traffic coming through Williams Road. If we know we're closing, it makes no sense for us to move that. We've also got leases for that we have with tenants, with some of the soils materials, the Mathers, which is the sand business. We have to let them know, because of the lease terms, that we will be closing. So it's like I said earlier, this is not about we just fill up until we're full and then we close the gates. There is a highly interrelated process around the way that you close down landfills, which is the subject of what's called the DOCP, which was forwarded to the Ministry of Environment earlier this year. We're behind on taking some of those steps because of the uncertainty.
Yeah, and I appreciate that business and all people in all walks of life like certainty as much as they can get in whatever they're dealing with, and that would include eco-waste. I think that depending on what happens today, though, I think the message is that the province does have an issue to deal with, in my opinion, one of their own creation. And I think that by and large, it's incumbent upon them to find a solution that works best. And so for me, excluding the land from the ALR is not the option that I'd support. And so I'll see how the discussion goes today. Thank you.
Can I just follow up on that? I'm kind of disappointed to hear the discussion that I'm hearing. You talk about, you know, if we don't do this, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to go belly up, so to speak. Within your intentions and your visions, is there an opportunity for the city to mitigate some of those issues for you? I see nowhere here saying the city to help. Okay, we'd like to do it, and I don't know why. You know, I'll be quite frank with you, I'll be political. If the provincial government starts taking away the autonomy from the city, like they're talking about housing and everything, they ain't gonna be there very long. And we're gonna stand out there, and we've got 4 seats in Richmond. We'll make sure they don't get them. Okay, I'll be quite frank with you. If a government is gonna usurp it, I'm not saying which way the vote has gone, because I don't know yet. But either way, that they start coming and being big brother and say, we're gonna do what we want in our backyard, because it's still in our backyard. I think we have 235,000 people. We're gonna have a say in it, whether we wanna have it or we don't wanna have it, because they may say whatever. So I guess, you know, you say you're increasing 10 feet. Well, okay, that's, I'm sure, discussionable. I don't know what you mean by investing 150 million or 50 to 100 million in world class. You didn't explain that. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's something we can help with. I don't know. Okay. Yeah. And, you know, those are the only 2 things in your whole page that give me some teeth to make a decision on it. So I guess we appreciate what Eco Waste has done over the years and everything, but, you know, we also have to protect the city one way or the other. And what decision we make here today, well, so, you know, we want to defer and let the minister come heavy-handed on it. Well, you don't think we're going to have some input into the minister as well, if we agree or don't agree? I'd like to know, because this has implications to all the other, not just landfill, but properties within Richmond that are in a similar situation. And so I guess from my point of view, I would hope you could give me some further thing. Where are we going? What's a world-class MRF? If that's what it is, I'd like to see it in my backyard. I'd like to see the good things, you know? Then I can pat myself in the back and we can boast our chest out and say, look what we did. But I don't know what it is.
Well,
so thank you for listening to my indulgence.
Well, first of all, we would love the opportunity to engage with city staff on what this looks like going forward. And, you know, we made in our proposal back in January, which supports the exclusion application, we talked about the need to engage in a dialogue to meet a range of different issues, recycling targets, what a material recovery facility is. I mean, what we're talking about here is something that the City of Richmond can really put its hand up and say, this is how you deal with construction and demolition waste, because there's nothing quite like it in North America right now. There are different versions of it, but that's what we're laying out in the intention and the vision, and we can share all kinds of visuals and all kinds of convincing evidence as to why, and that it makes sense for us as a private company with private ownership, why we want to make that investment, but it's also because of the impact it can have on recycling rates, which are stuck in the region. Mm-hmm. And there is no alternative that I know of, or no timescale for resolving this as to where construction and demolition waste is going to end up if our landfill closes and if the City of Vancouver landfill closes. So we would love to engage in that dialogue. That's why we think that denying the exclusion application restricts our ability to have those kind of conversations at this point in time because of the uncertainty with the province. And I completely accept what you're saying, Mr. Chair, with respect to the province.
No, I deny, even if we did deny it, those discussions could still go on. for you to carry on business. But that, like I said, that's not in your performa, and I'm not criticizing your performa. I only can take what we've got in front of us.
Yeah, but if you vote to deny the application, that removes the exclusion as one of the streams. That it relies solely then on the provincial government to make that change.
But you're telling me you can't do what you just enunciated without an exclusion. And Mike thought, I don't follow that. I think you can do those regardless, whether it's in or out. But maybe, okay.
If I may.
I'm from Missouri, but that's okay. That's okay.
Can I ask John to make a comment here with that?
Yeah,
Mr. Chair, I think the issue is that the provincial government is looking at various options to keep the landfill open. One of the options is exclusion, and they're counting on this making its way to the ALC. Another option is changing the ALR use regulation, which was changed before without any landfills being informed, to allow us to continue to deposit C&D waste. If they do change it, the option for us is then making a non-farm use application to keep the landfill open to 2055. As Michael said, we have no evidence yet that the provincial government has changed that regulation. They've been promising it, they're doing consultations on it. It may not happen in September, it may not happen till next year. So there are other options that they may be looking at. And all we're saying is that by denying exclusion, today you're taking one of those options off the table to keep the landfill open. And we cannot make another non-farm use application until the government changes the ALR use reg. It prevents us from doing that. So if they do that, that becomes another option. This exclusion app may be moot. We have no evidence when they're going to do it. So this is our only option, as Michael says.
all right.
And it still may be turned down by the Agricultural Land Commission. You can forward it to the ALC with your support. You could forward it without your support. But the commission still makes that decision, and they may
Right.
turn it down.
I appreciate you, you know, I like to try to keep things simple, but it'll be interesting with you. I've got some other speakers on for the second time. Carol?
Thank you very much. So I'm a little confused about the term of the current contract. Staff said when they first sat down that the term was till 2035, but Montrose Eco Waste has said that basically they'd be shutting down in 2023. Could I get clarity on that, please?
Well, I think the simple answer is we're just filling up much more rapidly than we thought when even the 2035 was approved. The volume of C&D waste is increasing.
That's 12 years difference. Is that okay? And then the other thing I wanted to ask was that if we went with a defer this for say a month or so, Councillor McNulty made some very good points. He said, what could we do together? Like, you know, what kind of compromises and suggestions, thinking really outside the box, maybe way outside the box, could we come up to if we defer for a month? Is there something on the table that you think that the city could help you with, so we could go to the ALC as a unified front and say, yeah, no, the land's not coming out of the ALC. That's a no-go item. We want it to continue operating, and these are the things that we're prepared to do to basically go as a united front with the province, because we know the province is the problem here. What could we do as a team?
Mr. Chair, I think it's important to distinguish between what the ALC can do and decide and what government needs to do and decide. The commission can deal with an exclusion app, or a non-farm use app, but in order to get there, the exclusion app has to come through you, and the non-farm use app awaits a change to the ALR use reg. And that's what we've been waiting for a year and a half. And like I said, if they change the use reg to allow us to put C&D fill in, then we may be able to make a non-farm use app to get what we need. There's no evidence, no conclusive evidence they're going to do that. That leaves us with exclusion. as the only option to keep this going.
Okay. All right, Carol. All right, Alexa.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you to the applicant for coming in and talking to us. So further to what Councillor Day was saying, so you filled up faster than you had intended to. And I guess the question is, so did you recycle at the rate you were expecting to? Or was there just more volume coming in to be dealt with from construction than people had ever imagined?
Michael, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, sure, Christian.
I've got a bit more history. So through the chair to Councillor Liu, this whole idea of a MRF started back in 2017, 2018. And at the time, we expected to have a MRF up and running in 2019. And if we would have hit that target, we would have had a lot of airspace left as of now. Not just a couple of years, we probably would have had 10 to 15 years of airspace left. The reason why we've been running out of airspace is twofold. One, we don't have a MRF operational because it takes 25 years to pay off that type of investment. And yes, we have started to see more material come to our site. If you take a look at the last 6 years, we've been averaging about 250,000 tons into the site. We've actually slowed that down last year to 150 because we know we're running out of space. But mostly it's been the delay of being able to build a MRF that's kind of made us fill up faster. When we build a MRF, we're expecting to divert 60 to 70% of what we currently bury away. We can recycle the plastics, we can sell the wood, we can sell the metal that often come to us in mixed loads. So there's probably been three big reasons: increased tonnage, the lack of a MRF, and just the time delay in order to be able to start putting this type of material through a materials recovery facility.
Okay. And my second question is, so besides you, where else does this construction waste go? So when we start looking at, numbers like $700 million in building applications, a lot of those are big buildings going up, and so it involves something else has to be torn down and that has to go somewhere. So where else is that construction waste going if it doesn't go to you?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, that tonnage goes a couple different places. Down to southern Washington, there's two landfills that Rabanco and Waste Management operate. That's roughly 350 miles, and it's completely rail dependent. That takes some of the material. Vancouver landfill, as Michael stated earlier, they don't want construction and demolition waste. They want to keep their airspace set aside for residential garbage. They don't want it filled up with private construction and demolition waste. There's a facility in Cache Creek that could start accepting this, but that is roughly $40 to $45 a ton to get it up there, which is pretty expensive to do. And every once in a while, there's a First Nations landfill that will pop up. Cheam landfill out in Rosedale was one that accepted waste for about a year, basically mid-2020 to mid-2021, but they filled up and they're not available anymore. So us being closed is going to result in waste having to go further, including over the border.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions of this delegation? Seeing none then, thank you very much. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to us on this matter? Okay, can't see, okay. Come forward if you're behind the partitions. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you for the presentation, and we have to come back to committee. We have a staff recommendation.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Okay, it's been moved. Is it seconded? I'll second it, put it on the floor. Okay? All right. It is open. Carol?
Okay, if I could.
Oh, Harold, you moved it. You're on first.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it. if I could speak to it, we are not denying the whole project. It's this application is being denied. If you read it carefully, we say we want the province to consider all options to allow the existing landfill at the site to operate in the ALR under a non-farm use approval. So that's not denying them to continue operation, and they can continue operation to 2035. Honestly, I don't like being threatened, which is what's happening here today. They've got another 13 years that they can operate the fill. They're telling us it's going to fill up by 2035. Well, if it's going to fill up by 2035, there's no need for the exclusion. Keep on filling it and close it down in 2035, which was what was originally considered. I just want to point out that while this land wasn't farmed, neither was any other of the bogland acreage in all of Richmond farmed. It was mined out peat bog, and except for this one, they are all now cranberry fields. And the reason this one isn't a cranberry field is it became a dump before we discovered we could grow cranberries on this land. And that's the only difference. I would also point out that there's a neighboring landfill on number 6 road. It's called Country Meadows Golf Course. It was a landfill from decades ago. It's still in the ALR. It was covered. It was all car wrecks. It was a wrecking a company that wrecked cars and a demolition site. And it's perfect, not only good farmland, it's a good golf course. And when golf courses come to their end, probably someday it will be farmed. As far as I'm concerned, if this land, if the government did remove this land out of the ALR, all hell is going to break loose. I certainly will do everything in my power to fight that government, and I'm still an honorary life member. I think that the big deal here is the money. Right now, industrial land is selling at $7 million an acre. So the profit on taking it out of the ALR, whether they develop it now or in 2035 or in 2050, is $1 billion profit. And I think that profit should go to the city, not to somebody that's getting their land out of the ALR or getting it out of agriculture. So I think that's really what we're talking about here today. So I certainly don't support it. I think the land should remain in the agricultural land reserve. The 2035 landfill should continue, and there's no reason it shouldn't. And they can start winding it down a couple of years before 2035. Hopefully, we'll find ways to recycle concrete and recycle lumber and all the materials that are being demolished at the present time. It's the objective of Metro Vancouver that we be recycling everything. And we should have been actually reducing the amount of materials going into this landfill already. So obviously there's something wrong somewhere. So I will not be supporting it. And I'm hoping that the provincial government will get the message. They made a mistake. They've got to tell the Land Commission to honor the contract, honor the agreement that Richmond had and that we worked out years ago to fill what was quite a deeply mined peat bog area with fill so that the land could be farmed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Carol?
I wanted to ask a question of staff. Given that you have been in constant contact with the ministry and the Agricultural Land Commission, do you think that a joint letter with Montrose and the city asking for the continued operation and for a MRF to be installed to start seriously recycling construction waste, do you think that they would be in any way swayed if that letter came from a united front of both the landfill operator and the city?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, while I can't comment on what the provincial government may do or how they may react to such a letter, what I will say is that since the 2019 non-farm use application was denied as a result of the legislation change, the city has proactively on its own devices written the province on multiple occasions, as well as appealing the original denial of the non-farm use. So the city's position has been very clear from day one that the operation of the landfill if it is to continue, should do so through a non-farm use, with the land remaining in the ALR and the commitment for that land to be converted into agricultural production and the ceasing of the landfill be required.
Have we ever written to them about the MRF, you know, the recycling facility that would take forever to pay off?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the addition of the material recovery and recycling facilities was approved by City Council and the ALC as part of the 2019 non-farm use application. The reason those facilities have not been installed, to staff's understanding, is because of the uncertainty over the long-term term of the landfill and the cost recovery that they believe is required to pay off that investment. So there is nothing currently stopping those facilities from being installed other than the potential cost recovery long-term of that investment.
From the city's perspective, yeah, I can see. Okay. So we're not making any headway. It's been 2 to 3 years that this has been going back and forth. But we keep getting these little snippets saying that the government is currently exploring a range of options. I just feel like we need to have all of our options on the table. And I know that denying it is probably going to end up being what we're going to have to do because we don't have any choice. But would it be worth one last kick of the can? That's my question to council. I mean, if we just tabled this, forget deferring it or denying it, just simply table it till the September planning committee meeting, write a joint letter to the province and say, look, we need this MRF installed. We need to continue with what we're already doing. And if you don't give us what we need, then they've made it very clear they're going to shut down at the beginning of 2023. It's up to you, and force their hand. I don't know. I wonder if it isn't worth one more kick at the can. But whether this Montrose would be willing to, I think we have to take the 10 meters off the table, and we for sure have to taking it out of the ALR off the table. So I'm not sure if the applicant wants to speak to that, if that's too much of a compromise for you, or do you get that if we do this together, we actually have a shot at maybe moving the needle?
All right, thank you. Jack?
Yes. Well, actually, Councillor Day asked some of my questions. Now, because the part 2 of the staff recommendation is that we are writing to the government and requesting them to consider all options. So I don't know what those options are. So can staff just give me some hints or some information about, what, when we talk about all options, what are we referring to?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, in terms of the simplest option in staff's view, it is a order in council to amend the agricultural land use regulations, which are currently permitted or prohibiting the ability for a non-farm use associated with construction waste debris to be considered. So we do believe the province has that authority. We believe that is the best solution from the city's behalf.
Okay, very good. So, and secondly, the applicant mentioned about the possibility of filling up faster than expected, and the likelihood of beginning to close it down by 2023. Can staff get us more information? I mean, I don't want to make a decision based on some general idea, but can we have some hard data, so to speak, to see whether or not that kind of a comment is reasonable?
Through the chair to Councillor Al, in terms of the landfill operations and the approvals that are in place, there are 2 criteria associated with it. One is the time frame. The other is the height of fill and the amount of fill. I believe what the applicant is alluding to in terms of looking at potential closure of the landfill within 2 years they are coming close to reaching their current capacity limit, which is 18 meters in height.
Okay, good.
Okay, I'm going to make a few comments. I don't see any more hands. We're close to 18 meters in height, and possibly there are some things I keep going back to their intention and vision on it. I'm not prepared to play with the provincial government. Time and time again, we bail them out. and the buck stops with us at a city level. And I'm sorry, Madam the Minister, I'm not going to bail the minister out. We got David Eby trying to bail us out and tell us what to do with housing. You know, we got all these kinds of things, and we make the decision, and we're responsible to the taxpayers of Richmond. So I think we make a decision. And then what we do after that decision is up to us and up to the applicant. We know the good work and what we're doing with the landfill and that. Staff have given us a recommendation, and I'm going to have to support it. I don't have a choice, and anybody doesn't, because somebody's going to come along and say, I don't believe in agricultural land, you know, including some members of council. The government, and we've also got an option here for the government to look at what they're doing, but I hope it's in conjunction with the city, that we look at it, and there's communication with the city on what they're going to do, because this is our backyard, unless you're going to make it a blanket sweep for the whole province, and other concerns and other sites that are affected by this. So I don't think we have any choice, to be quite frank with you, on it, as much as I would like to go the other way. I want to see the landfill open. If it's reaching 18 feet, they're seeking to increase the height. Maybe that issue should be addressed. If they want an MRF, what does that look like, and how do we possibly address it and help it? Okay, there are things we can do, but keeping it in the ALR. So that's where my point is, and I'm not going to waffle. I'm not going to be honest with you. I live by the sword and die by the sword, and I'm not of the provincial government. They created it. Let them bail it out, but hopefully bail it out to the benefit of everybody involved, and not us that gets burned by it. So with that, okay, I've got one more speaker, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. Well, just looking at the recommendation and a couple comments, it almost seems to me in a way that staff recommendation number 2 and number 1 could be reversed. But I just want to make it clear that the Agricultural Land Commission, I've heard being described as making an unprecedented decision in supporting an exclusion from the Agricultural Land Reserve. And I've been pretty clear with people that I don't agree with that position by the Agricultural Land Commission at all. And the solution is for the province to amend their regulations and to allow for what was allowed up until now and still currently happening. So the non-farm use application is something that could be done if the province takes action, as has been described by a couple people already. So I think it has been reduced down to 2 options, and I won't be supporting an exclusion from the Agricultural Land Reserve. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other speakers? It's been moved and seconded. Then I'm going to call the question. It's on the floor as the staff recommendation by Mr. Craig with item number 1 and item number 2. All those in favor? Those contrary? It's carried. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the referral response of the residential data and timing. Mr. Craig.
Through the chair, it's Joshua Reese with Development Applications here to give a couple of highlights. So nothing new to add to the report, Mr. Chair, but I would like to highlight that this report is being provided for information purposes only and responds to a referral from the Planning Committee. Tables 1 and 2 in the staff report on page PLN 67 break down the number of residential units applied for between 2017 and May of this year for rezoning, development permit, and building permit applications. I would also like to highlight that there are a number of actions and planned projects that are underway to support the city's review of development applications and building permit applications. These include, amongst other items, the council-supported permitting optimization project, which aims to optimize and streamline the permitting process while leveraging technology to enhance the customer experience. In addition, another initiative underway is improving the quality of submissions and engaging the development community on a regular basis. Staff are available to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of staff? Seeing none? Oh, Michael, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, through the chair to staff. My only question is in table number 2, it has for 2022, 0 townhouses. Could you just comment on, because I see townhouses at varying stages of being built, and I would think that there'd be some applications at some point this year. Could you clarify?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, Mr. Cooper, perhaps you'd be best able to respond to this as it is in regards to a building permit application.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Wolf. That's the number of applications to date that we've received for building permits. So it doesn't mean that there aren't in process during rezoning and also during development permit approval.
So if I could follow up then through the chair, are we expecting that number to catch up, or like is there a reason why you think the data would show that now?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, it normally does. I mean, the pace of processing permits usually comes in starts and stops. It's very rarely that do we have a steady stream other than single family homes. And even that by year varies quite a bit. But we do on it evens out on average as to the total number of applications and a total number of units per year.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the staff's work in collecting this data and the referral that was made to provide this. So thank you.
Okay, Linda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to staff. Well, thank you for a very illuminating report. Thanks to Councillor Hobbs for making this referral. And, you know, I think that we always believe that our staff are doing a great job, but every single one of us, I'm sure, has had an applicant call us and say things are going off the rails, you know, you got to help me. And so I think this is being really open and transparent about the work that you do every day, and that, you know, you're always striving for and looking at ways to improve, which I think is really important. Really helps me, you know, think about things in a different way. Some of the things that you shared in the report, I didn't know were going on. So I think that's really great. Now, on PLN 73, you're going to be consulting with the development community in the fall of 2022, which I think is really good. I think it's good that they see this data, they see this information, and they see the ways that we're trying to improve. I think technology is going to help us a lot. And so would there be a report back to council or committee on the feedback from that consultation?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, would be happy to provide an update. At this point in time, the engagement will focus on receiving feedback from the industry about any sort of suggestions, pain points they may be experiencing. We will also be discussing some of our intended work in terms of permit optimization. So yes, we can provide a memo to staff following that engagement.
Great, thanks very much.
Okay, Councillor Liu? Excuse me. Alexa?
Thank you through the chair. Thank you to staff for this. It's important information. So just to clarify, on PLN 67, there's a number of residential permits that are higher than rezoning and development permits, because many things like single family homes, duplexes, those kind of things aren't subject, or well, duplexes are, but single family homes, suites, 2-family dwellings, things like that aren't subject to rezoning. Is that correct? Or there's different?
Through the chair to Councillor Liu, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I would also add that they also represent permits that would be of like a rezoning, for example, that would have been applied for in 2016 that was issued, and then subsequently the building permits received a couple of years later.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Well, first of all, thanks for the report. It was a substantial amount of information and I think quite helpful. So Just a couple of quick questions on page 68, when you're talking about the goal of, 4.5 months, and specifically with the building approvals committed to feedback within 6 weeks of the application being made. Do you have any indication on like the metrics as to how you're doing on that, or is that more of an anecdotal feel? Like, for instance, you know that you accomplished that goal for 90% of the applications? Because there's always outliers. I think everybody understands that.
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, yes. For application types for single family homes, I have data that shows that we are within, for most cases, within 1 to 3 weeks for the first comments back, or our review comments are come back. As an average, yes, the six, I can show that for 6 months or 6 weeks is the acceptable average that we have for single family homes. Where we vary greatly is in the complexity of commercial applications. So we have data that says that I could be very cheerful and say that for every single residential permit type all lumped together as an average, that, golly gee, we're at, about 5 months a person can get a permit, whether it's a multi-tower project or a single family home. But that statistic is murky. I don't think I would want to present that as definitive, but it does show that as an overall, about 5 months is what we take, irrespective of if it's a house, a renovation, or a multi-tower project. When you lump them all together, that's the building permit time.
Okay, good, and thanks. Just one more question through the chair. I know for an absolute fact, Mr. Cooper, that you and I have both been in meetings where people have been complaining about the length of time. Might have been one today, actually. But on page 71, I wonder if it's a fair question to ask right now, but you can tell me if it's not. For the fast track option for simple rezoning and development permit applications, what would be an example of a fast track? Like what kind of application would that be?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the fast track rezoning process is something that was put in place a number of years ago. It really applies to single family applications that are conforming with council policy, either the official community plan or lot size policies. Frankly, that application process is difficult, given that tree retention and tree assessment is a primary consideration. So we do not see many applications that actually qualify for that stream or are willing to pursue that at this point in time. In terms of the criteria, the fast track process, what we do is for an additional application fee, we do guarantee that the application will be brought forward to public hearing within an approximately 5-month time.
Sure. Oh, thanks. Maybe there's something offline I can follow up on as to the criteria and the whys and wherefores for that. Thank you very much.
Okay, Chuck?
2 questions. Thanks for this very conversation. My first question is, do you know how do we compare to other cities? Now we have the information for ourselves. Do you know, in comparison to other cities, how well are we doing? And secondly, I don't know if you can share this report to, with the MLAs or the even the provincial government, because I hate to be accused time and again, saying that, it's the cities who are delaying the process. So maybe giving them some information would be good. So just these 2 questions.
Mr. Chairman, perhaps I can deal with that one. I'm a little further removed than some of the directors. Anecdotally, we compare very well. So, certainly even Minister Eby was mentioned earlier in the meeting. He's gone out of his way to acknowledge Richmond as sort of one of the more efficient municipalities for processing an application, dealing with applications. So anecdotally, we feel that we compare very favourably, and there seem to be quite a few folks with that opinion too. But it sounds simple, but these applications are they're really hard to measure, because they spend time with us, they spend time back with the applicant. Sometimes the consultants are missing in action and it takes time. So it's actually quite difficult to compare with other municipalities that have slightly different processes. What we are hoping though, and this isn't a cop-out response, but as part of the upgrade of Amanda, which council funded and which we're implementing with IT, we hope in future to be able to better measure segments of the process that we control, because it's not really fair to hold the city accountable, say, for a 6-month delay with the architect or with the applicant. But with the new tools that we're putting in place moving forward, we will be able to measure and compare the portions of the process that are in city control. So we'll be able to measure our performance, not just within Richmond, but also hopefully externally. But it is a bit of there is still a way to go before we can do that in a scientific way.
Thank you.
Okay, Carol? Carol, try it again.
Okay. I don't think I'm ever going to learn this. Mr. Ersick brings up a very good point. Like, I'm looking at two sets of numbers, just breaking it down to apartment. And in 2019, that the permit received was 805, but applied for was 2,761. So that's quite a difference. And yet the following year, the numbers are reversed. You've got permits received 1,854, and how many were applied? Only 440. So you would expect, like we always get graphs for everything that we do at City Council, you would expect to see kind of like an upward pattern and not just high, low, high, low. Is that because developers are applying and getting their permits, or either or, and then abandoning it because now they could sell the package for more money than they could before?
Well, sorry, do you want me to take this one, Joe, or do you want to jump in?
Oh, sure. You guys go ahead.
I'll provide some information through the chair to Councillor Day, and then please feel free to add anything, James, Joe, or Josh. In terms of the ebb and flow of the numbers, I think there's a few things that I would say to describe that. One, obviously, once a rezoning application is submitted or a development permit application is submitted, developers generally will not apply for a building permit until they're far along in that process. So there is a time lag between when our original rezoning application, development permit application actually transitions into a building permit. I think the other thing that can be gleaned from that type of information is the development industry is a very smart industry. They're not willing, or they're not going to compete against themselves. If the market has a glut of product on the market, they will hold back and wait until there is a more opportune time to build.
And if they're through the chair to Councillor Day, I'd just like to add that applicants are also very sensitive to increases in fees and changes in building codes. So if you notice in your example, Councillor Day, the 1 year it was 2,761. Well, that was the year then December. That was a substantial code change came in place. So everybody rushes in and puts their permits that they've been working on in design for could be years, and they don't want to change their design in relation to having to, because a new code is in place. So everybody rushes in and gets it in before December 12th of that year.
Interesting. So as you hone this down further, and I suspect that, I mean, councillors are very interested in these kinds of numbers because it helps us justify to people like Minister Eby that we are doing what we need to do. But having said that, cross-referencing, and I just pulled this out of my file cabinet, like in 2020, which is the numbers that I was quoting to you, we had where are they? 1,854 received permits. And that was the year we also were the second highest payer of the speculation and vacancy tax, being below Vancouver with $8.7 million. Do we tie in, like we're building? We all know we're building. We see these buildings sprouting up, but are they being occupied and are they being rented? So I think these numbers are super interesting, but it would be great if, I don't know if it's possible to marry everything together, the rental, the non-rental, the vacancy, the speculation, because it's the bigger picture that we need to know if we're doing it right or doing it wrong.
Okay. Any other comments to staff? All right, we have a recommendation. Do I have a mover?
Move.
Seconder, moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary, carried. Do we have any managers' reports?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have one
Excellent.
item. It is a staff introduction.
Oh.
Mr. Alex Costin has just turned on his camera. Alex is a new member of the development applications team. He joins us from the District of Summerland. You will be seeing more of Alex at upcoming meetings.
Yes, I'm very happy to be here and very nice to meet you all.
Welcome to the Planning Committee and welcome to Richmond.
Thank you very much.
All right, Linda. I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question and under the manager's update. If we could get an update on how the OCP review is going, and I just have a question of the timeline.
Mr. Hopkins.
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor McPhail, we can provide a committee or council an update where we're at. Essentially, right at the moment, we're kind of in the research stage and we're reviewing a lot of the referrals that also have been sent our way. The intention is to have a report to council towards the end of the year that would summarize the research and outline a public consultation program with essentially policy options at that point. So I would expect sort of more of a rigorous consultation program in 2023 reviewing policy options. But we can certainly provide council an update over the summer months if you like.
Well, thank you for that. And my next question is about the public consultation. And, with affordable housing being such a topic of discussion for council and in the community, when are you envisioning, as you go out to public consultation, that being part of the consultation? And I think it might be really helpful I've talked to a lot of people and, we're all used to LEMUR, rental tenure, affordable housing, what all that, we kind of know what that means. But a lot of the people in the public, they don't know what it means until it's in their backyard. And I think we could probably help the community understand, the affordable housing issues we're facing if we had kind of like Q&A about what this means. So were you envisioning something like that as you go out to the community next year?
Through the chair to Councillor McPhail, absolutely. I think part of the consultation is also educating stakeholders and interested members of the public. So we will have to try to break it down to, as simple as possible so they can understand what they're deciding upon and reacting to if we're asking for comments. So yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. And I think as we've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks, it would be really helpful if the public in neighborhoods where we're looking at some of these proposals had maybe more information so that they could have the buy-in or at least ask appropriate questions. So thanks very much.
Okay, are there any other questions of staff? Just want to say to staff, thanks very much for your input this afternoon. And I thought it was a rather difficult meeting for all of committee. And thank you, Tony, for your background on it as well. So good job by all. Thank you very much. Motion to adjourn. Moved, seconded. We are adjourned. Thank you.